Shri Gurubhyam Namaha. This is Hemalata from Pon Vidyashram. Today's session is about Chapter 1 What, Where, How and When. From History Book Our Pasts 1. History. What is history? History is the study of past in a chronological order. Events occurred before the invention of writing systems are considered as prehistory. Why do we study history? Is it important to learn history? Yes, it is. History helps us to understand the past, to predict the future, and help in creating it. Studying history gives us wide opportunities to get better understanding of our past experiences, to count on the great achievements, and to avoid the terrific mistakes. To understand and to get a clear picture about the past, we should know four things: what, where, how, and when. What? We'll study about food of the people. Where the people lived. How they dressed up. When is for the time period. For example, we love to hear stories about our parents and grandparents. If you ask about their childhood, they will tell you lots of stories. If you notice clearly, the childhood story will be about any particular incident. The story will explain us about what happened during that incident, where it was happened, how it was happened, and when it was happened. So what can we know about the past? You may be thinking that what can we know about the past? Well, we can know many things about our past, like what people ate, how they dressed up, how they lived, and kind of houses they lived. Also, we can find that what types of group of people were there in past, like hunters, gatherers, priests, herders, farmers, craft persons, etc. Like in nowadays, we listen songs through music player or mobile phone. We play indoor and outdoor games. So we can also know about what type of game children played, how they listen songs, stories, etc. So maps. Nowadays, we use technology to reach any place. What is the beginning of all these technologies? Maps. To understand any historical event, maps plays a very important role. We can use historic maps to trace the development of features and landscapes through time by comparing maps and finding out what has changed and what has stayed the same. When we look carefully at maps, we can find a lot about how people lived in the past. Where did people live? In earlier days, people have settled near rivers, hills, forests, where they can find bounty of resources to live. Now we'll read about people who settled in those places. Find the river Narmada in this map. People have lived along the banks of this river for several thousand years. Some of the earliest people who lived here were skilled gatherers, that is, people who collect their food by knowing all the resources around them. The people lived here knew very well about the vast wealth of plants in the surrounding forests and collected fruits, roots for their food, collected wood, barks, and leaves to produce fire, hunted animals to eat. People settled near hills and cultivated crops. Can you find Sulaiman and Kirtar hills to the northwest? Sulaiman and Kirtar hills are some of the areas where humans started to cultivate crops. Here, men and women began to grow crops about 8,000 years ago. They cultivated crops like wheat and barley, which the staple food for them. People also began to rearing animals like sheep, goat and cattle. Rearing means raising animals for their food. Locate the Garo Hills to the northeast and Vindhyas in central India. In these areas, agriculture developed. To the north of the Vindhyas, rice were first grown. When group of people settled in a place, it formed into cities. Earliest cities were found near rivers. Trace the river Indus and its tributaries towards the northwest of India. What are tributaries? Tributaries are smaller rivers that flow into a larger river. On the bank of river Indus and its tributaries, some of the earliest cities flourished during 4,700 years ago. These settlements were part of the Indus Valley civilization. It became the base of the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro civilizations. These cities include Harappa, Ganeriwala, and Mohenjo-daro in modern-day Pakistan, and Dholavira, Kalibangan, Rakhigarh, Roopur, and Lothal in modern-day India. In total, more than 1,052 cities and settlements have been found, mainly in the general region of the Indus River and its tributaries. Later, about 2,500 years ago, people moved towards the center of northern India, and cities developed on the banks of the Ganga and its tributaries and along the sea coast. Locate the Ganga and its tributary Son. In ancient times, the area along these rivers to the south of the Ganga was known as Magadha. Magadha was a kingdom. When people lived as a big community, automatically they choose a leader for them. Like Magadha, there were 15 more kingdoms flourished in North India. It was called as Mahajanapadas, a set of 16 kingdoms. Among them, Magadha was very powerful and a large kingdom. Kingdoms were set up in other parts of the country as well. People traveled from one part of the subcontinent to another. Why do we call South Asia as a subcontinent? This is a map of South Asia, including the present-day countries of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka, and the neighboring countries of Afghanistan, Iran, China, and Myanmar. South Asia is often called a subcontinent because although it is smaller than a continent, it is large and is separated from the rest Asia by seas, hills, and mountains. When people travel from one part of the subcontinent to another, the hills and high mountains, including Himalayas, deserts, rivers, and seas, made journeys dangerous at times, but never impossible. Men and women were very curious about traveling in search of livelihood, and also they moved to new places to escape and protect themselves from natural disasters like floods and droughts. Sometimes men marched in armies conquering others' lands. Besides, Merchants traveled with caravans or ships carrying valuable goods from place to place. Religious teachers walked from village to village and town to town to offer instructions and to give advices. Only some people traveled by a spirit of adventure, wanting to discover new and exciting places. All these led to sharing of ideas between people. Look at the map. Hills, mountains, and seas form the natural frontiers of the subcontinent. Even though it is difficult to cross these natural boundaries, people came into the subcontinent and settled here. As a result of the movement of the people around the subcontinent, it enriched our cultural traditions. People have shared new ways of carving stone, composing music, and even cooking food over several hundreds of years. Names of the land. How India got its name? Our country, often called as India and Bharat. The word India comes from the Indus, called Sindhu in Sanskrit. When the people came across seas and mountains into our country, different people called it in different names. When Iranians and the Greeks, who came through the northwest about 2500 years ago and were familiar with the river Indus, called it the Hindos or the Indos, and the land to the east of the river was called India. Bharata was mentioned in Rig Veda to locate our country. It was named after a king. Northwest part of our country and the people lived there were called as Bharata. Rig Veda is the earliest composition in Sanskrit, which was dated about 3500 years ago. Later, it was used for our country.